An explosion. Then the piercing whistle of metal cutting through the air. A steel rod slams into a man's face, blasts through his brain. And he's still standing, covered in blood, but alive. This isn't a movie scene. This is one of the most shocking accidents in history. His name, Phineas Gage. And this is the chilling story that showed the world how our brain shapes who we are. In 1848, in the quiet hills of Vermont, 25-year-old Phineas Gage was a respected foreman on a railroad construction site. Intelligent, disciplined, friendly, the kind of leader everyone trusted. But on one calm September day, his life would change forever. The sun shone over the green hills. The sound of hammers echoed along the railroad line. Gage was leading his crew, blasting through rock to make way for the tracks. In his hands was a 3.5-foot iron tamping rod, something he had used hundreds of times before. But on this day, fate had other plans. As Gage lowered the rod to pack sand over blasting powder, the iron struck the rock and created a spark. In an instant, the powder ignited. The rod turned into a missile, over a meter long, more than 13 pounds of solid iron, moving faster than the eye could follow. It entered his left cheek, passed behind his left eye, tore through his frontal lobe, and burst out the top of his skull. The rod landed 80 feet away. Witnesses froze in horror, but Gage, shockingly, placed his hand on his head and said calmly, "I think you better get a doctor." Dr. John Harlow arrived to a sight he could barely believe. There was a gaping hole in Gage's skull, blood and brain tissue exposed. In the mid-1800s, such an injury was a death sentence. And yet Gage was talking, even joking. Harlow cleaned the wound, removed bone fragments, and kept him alive. In the first weeks, it seemed like a miracle. Gage could walk, talk, and eat normally. But as time passed, friends and family noticed something unsettling. Phineas Gage was no longer the same man. The once polite, responsible leader had become impatient, rude, and reckless. He lost his job. Friends drifted away. Dr. Harlow wrote, he was no longer Gage. Back then, science didn't know much about which parts of the brain controlled behavior, but Gage's accident revealed the critical role of the frontal lobe, the part responsible for decision-making, personality, and social behavior. Gage tried to rebuild his life. He worked as a stagecoach driver in Chile, later taking odd jobs in the US. Over time, he regained some stability, an early example of what we now call neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt. But the accident never truly let go. 12 years later, epileptic seizures began, and at just 36 years old, Phineas Gage died. Today, his skull and the iron rod that changed his life are preserved at Harvard University. His story remains one of the most important cases in neuroscience, living proof that damage to the brain can change the essence of a person. Phineas Gage survived the impossible, but he could never return to who he once was. So, what do you think? Is surviving enough if it means losing yourself?